Hello, all. Welcome to Real Food Recovery. Here we are, episode 50. And today we're talking all about, here it comes, guys. This is my European soccer announcer impersonation. Goals!
Okay, how did it land, everybody?
Did it work?
Yeah, it worked for me.
So happy to be here today with you, Paige.
Yeah.
Today, we're going to talk all about goals and how they relate to recovery. No, you don't need to say it that way every time, although it would be fun if you did. I'm going to start in a backward way and ask you what happens if you don't have goals.
Yeah.
So, Paige, do you want to take a stab at our opener? What happens if you don't have goals?
Sure. I know that when we don't set goals, we have no motivation and everything is harder from work to relationships and beyond. And without goals, you'll also have a tough time seeing growth in all areas of life. Your finances, fitness, relationships, and your mind, it may begin to stagnate a little bit. You drift, and drifting never leads to happiness or fulfillment. But moving towards an exciting goal can electrify your life. When when Jamie and I started planning this podcast, and then eventually that revolved into this online recovery community that we have, I was in air quotes over electrified, and I could not sleep at night. I was just planning and preparing all night long, which
A lot
Jamie
of lost
already,
sleep on Paige's part.
yes. Yes, which Jamie knows, because every time in the morning I would wake up, I'm laying there in bed thinking, how early is too early to start texting her with all the goals that I went over in my mind last night. Certainly she's awake, or hopefully her phone's on silent, but I would start every morning with a text about saying, okay, here's what I thought about last night while I was sleeping. So yes, goals helped as we progressed into what we have evolved from our podcast to our online recovery community now. I also remember when our last child finally left for college after having 6 kids in our house. It was a major life change for us. I was completely lost. All of our kids were very involved in sports. And so all year round, 2 or 3 nights a week, we were up at the school at uh, basketball, baseball, football, cheerleading, and I was busy watching sports uniforms and cheerleading uniforms. All week long. It was a blur of about 8 years constant, where all of our older kids were in high school. So that kept me busy all the time. And I remember after our last one left, I remember one of the first mornings after she was gone. First of all, I dropped her off at KU. We live in Kansas University in Lawrence. It's the big school. It's the end school. In case if any of the K-Staters are listening, it is the number one school. But, I bawled the whole way home. The 2 hours home, I literally was inconsolable for about 2 weeks. I couldn't stop crying. But after one of the first mornings after she was gone, it was about 10 a.m. and I'd gotten all the really heavy stuff done for the morning, because I'm up early and getting my workout in, my prayers, and just doing little things. And I remember, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now? Because a lot of my hours were consumed with making sure kids' needs were taken care of. I literally had to rebuild my life and set new goals. So while I was in this transformation, I started walking in the evening with a friend who also, her last child and daughter had left for college as well. I started working on a 1,000-piece puzzle to keep my mind busy in the evenings while my husband watched TV. And I had to work through this transition and literally recalibrate my life. I was completely lost. And those lack of goals kept me empty, like I had never experienced before. I didn't realize what was on the other side. So I hadn't even thought about resetting goals. But being an empty nester allowed me to focus more on myself than I ever had. Whole new experience, whole new world opened up for me. I wasn't prepared for this new normal, and it took me a minute to get my feet back under me. So that was a really big eye opener into the importance of
Mhm.
goals for
Yeah.
me.
So let's flip the script and talk about why goals are important, especially for those in recovery. Setting goals is an essential part of the recovery process and can make the overwhelming tasks between addiction and sobriety seem less intimidating. with each goal that is accomplished, the recovering addict or the person in recovery or an awareness of their need for recovery can feel a small sense of victory in the battle to
Yeah.
be recovered.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, my 4-year transformation involved a lot of goal setting. But it really wasn't. So when I began my weight loss journey in 2008, I lost my first 200 pounds over 4 years. And I didn't really set it up that way. It's just the way it happened. It was pretty
Can I
consistent.
ask you a question about that? When you started, did you have a goal of that, or I,
No,
I
no, I
was
just knew I
curious.
needed to get healthier. And
Interesting.
I couldn't find scales to really weigh myself
Mm,
when I started, or before I started. And so finally the scale at the dietitian's office was the source of truth for me then.
mm,
So I knew what the number was when I started, um, even though I didn't want to know.
yeah.
And I had, now that number that I weighed at the office with her was lower than my highest, because by that point I knew that I was really heading towards something horrible and I needed to do something about it.
And that's why I didn't know if you had any concept of what you were capable of achieving. Could you even set goals that big? I'm interrupting you, but it's just so fascinating
Yeah.
what you've
I
done.
don't
It's so
know. I
amazing.
think back then I wouldn't have set a goal that big because I didn't think I
Yeah.
could have achieved it.
Yes.
I
That's what
didn't want to, I didn't want to get in my own way.
mm-hmm.
Um, and I just knew that I needed to get in a more healthy place and in a more healthy body.
Yeah.
So I ended up, again, year by year, just kind of worked my way through it. And then we started by 2011, 2012, we were talking about goal weight. And I remember thinking like,
Huh?
this is, weird. And I'd spent enough time in the weight loss world that I knew what it was like to move into the 300 range and the 200 range and the 100 range.
Wow.
But I did not really refine things. I had passed, into the 100s, but I did not know how to really refine things from there. So but I set the goal not of weight, but of fitness. So I started moving into more fitness related goals.
Mm-hmm.
And that allowed me from 2011 and 12, it really allowed me to set goals of being more comfortable in my own body. Because I had to learn everything about my body from the beginning. I'd never been, not never, but I wasn't that size in 25 years probably.
Yeah.
Like I really was obese all of my young life. So if I was ever that weight, I was a child and probably didn't, still overweight. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how to be in my body.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to own it, how to live in it, how to manage it, how to dress it. I had to learn all of those things. I still don't to this day. I know how to dress it conceptually, of course, but I don't really like dress it for any kind of fashion or to maximize different parts of my body because I just never learned how to do that. It was always dressing to cover up the body.
Mm-hmm.
So when I set the goals for in fitness, I had little goals of learning how to do this new fitness. When I learned TRX, which is all suspension training, I learned
Mm-hmm.
how to do that. And I set the goal and did that. I set weightlifting goals. I set weight lifting goals as far as how much weight I could lift versus how much
Mm-hmm.
weight I could lose. And that became really exciting to me. I set goals around food and food prep and learning how to cook healthy meals and how to cook
Mm-hmm.
healthy components for food prep. Those were the goals that I set. And then I had a weight loss goal, a final goal in mind, um, for my height and my build. Um, and I, unfortunately, I did hit it but at the time I was not healed or even healing really from the years of punishment that I'd done to myself. So I hit it in a way that was, really very restrictive.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not a goal that I could really achieve and sort of sit in for a while. That didn't happen till some years later. So again, the goals weren't around weight for me. They were around behaviors, and they were around learning new things.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious. You said during those 4 years that you lost your weight, did you work with that same nutritionist during that whole time?
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yes.
And it's interesting, we were having a conversation in one of our connection hours in Real Food Recovery this morning about the diet mentality versus the recovery mentality. And the diet mentality is there's still that white knuckling it and restriction, and what's the least amount I can eat
Right.
today, and what's the
Right.
most amount of exercise I can get in without fainting. And so I can, what's the skinniest I can, I mean, it's that recovery is calm
Yeah.
where,
It's a place coming from a place of scarcity,
yes.
of not enoughness versus
Mhm.
abundance. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. So for me, I have a story about how goals helped me achieve a life moment that was pretty big for me. So that youngest daughter that went off to KU, she was there for 2 years, having the tea of her L, as the young kids say, the time of her life. And she was, freshman, sophomore year, in the sorority, dating a boy on the football team, and lots of friends, lots of parties, just all the action you can imagine for 18 and 19-year-old girl. But after her sophomore year, she was ready to go into the nursing program. And the KU campus in Lawrence does not host a nursing program there. They have one in Kansas City if you want to stay with KU, or you have to apply to other nursing schools. And it was very, very competitive at that time. And we got into several applications around. She got into a private nursing school here that's about 40 minutes from Wichita, where we live. And so she had to come home. She had to come home to live with her roommates, AKA parents. So you're leaving behind your sorority, all your friends, the boyfriend, I mean, the social life, everything, coming home to mom and dad, which is not easy when you're 20 years old, and at the height of socialization. So in despair, she decided that she would run a half marathon. Now, mind you, she's a couch potato. And so she just says, okay, I'm going to run a half marathon. Okay, sure. And honestly, probably I didn't take it really that seriously, because at the time I was a runner too. I ran for about 30 years. And, but 6 miles was about the most I would go. So I said, you know what, I'll do it with you. Wink, wink. So I didn't really think I would, I figured she'd peter out, but by golly, she stuck with it. She had nothing else besides school, parents, and running at that time, and was working on literally rebuilding her life. And so I said, I will train with you as long as I physically can do it. And so I set a goal of, when you're training for a half marathon, you add 1 mile each week. You have one long run plus short run. So okay, time came, got 6 miles and beyond. And so then I went to 7, then I went to 8, then I went to 9, then 10, 11, and 12 each week. I was able to add that one more mile. And I knew if I could run 12, that I could run 13 before race day. So setting all those small goals was less intimidating. I accomplished something that brought me great reward. And I went on to do several more half marathons. It opened up a world. I loved it until my old lady hip flexors and knees started squawking at me. So that's when I had to switch to mountain climbing. But it really is true. The greater the challenge, the greater reward. And I have mourned losing the running, but I really do. Now I've started traveling around doing different kinds of mountain climbing, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about later on. But those small successes are like gold to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. When I think about setting goals, it forces me to stop and examine what I want in life. It really does. It
Mhm.
kind of is a huge um pause button for me to say, okay, where do I want to go? What do I want to do? Instead of just doing the next thing that comes at me, I actually it allows me to be more intentional. So
Mhm.
it's requires introspection and coming up with
Mhm.
a goal that really is, when I come up with a goal, that is a way for me to um, really boost my own motivation towards it. I remember
Mhm.
in 20, I was in grad school, so it was probably 2013, because it was going to be a year of prep. I announced that I was going to do a fitness competition, which was, you know, unheard of for somebody who was morbidly obese to even think about wanting to do any kind of competition. And it was not, unfortunately, it was probably not the best competition choice that I could have made. There were other competitions I could have done that would have been more life affirming, but it was the one I wanted at the time, which was all around, you know, physique development. And I really thought it would be interesting and fascinating to be a physique competitor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, sparkly bikini, the whole thing, fake tan, the whole thing. And I did it. But it took me a solid year, maybe even 18 months to get to a place where I had, for the first time in my life, developed the kind of muscle and the kind of
Wow.
physique and of course the kind of diet to take me to the stage. And again, I was not breaking any records for awards at the event, but it was more just the fact that I got there
Yeah.
and that I was able to do it. So it was, but announcing that goal to friends, and then once people started seeing me at this community gym that I was part of, which was it's all, you know, recreational complex in the town I lived in, so it was very social and it was very,
Mm-hmm.
everyone was there
Mm-hmm.
that I was friends with. So it was a lot of fun because I got a lot of encouragement and
Yeah.
people were really cheering me on because they knew they had seen me start to come to the gym back in, you know, 2011, 2010, and they
Oh,
had
you
seen
were
me
at that same gym from
same
your
facility.
highest to the, oh my
Oh,
gosh.
I wasn't my highest at that point because there was no way I was going to step foot in a gym at my highest, but they had seen me sort of transforming from, you know, maybe an average weight in the twos or threes, and then, you know, coming in and kind of refining things from there. So I had a lot of people very interested in
Oh,
my story and in my transformation, which was a wonderful. I really felt like somebody in that way, in the physical appearance way. I felt like somebody for the first time in my whole life versus trying to hide from my physical appearance. So that
yeah.
was nice.
Yeah. Huge, huge accomplishment. I mean, guys, when Jamie tells her story, I'm always on, I know I've heard it several times, but every single time I'm like, how did she do that? I mean, it's impossible for me to lose 5 pounds. And here this woman did this amazing thing, not just for a minute, for years. And she's, you know, the 0.0001% of people in the world. So I listen to what she has to say, is what I'm saying. So I
Thanks.
appreciate your
Thank you.
stories. You know, we have talked before about the key to success in processed food addiction. It's the application of skills equals impulse control. So
Mhm.
and when we look at it in that way, it gives us a place to start in our recovery. Where do we need the most work? Or we ask ourselves, what is killing us most? The majority of the work in recovery is on the development of these skills that are applied before you are in a situation where impulse control is put to the test. Jamie, do you agree with that? Have you found that to be true, that the major focus on recovery is your skill set so you're prepared before events happen?
Yes, absolutely. And also, you know, skill set and also just being aware if I have an expectation, being aware of what that looks like so that I can get ahead of it. Because for me, expectations really just take me down. Uh, they can lead to food use, but they really more commonly will lead to resentments, which take me away from being present and take me out of my recovery brain in general.
Yeah,
It might not lead to food in the you know,
good point.
immediate period following, but it will eventually, it could lead to using food. And it just takes me out of my mindset that I really love to have in recovery, which is trusting trusting my higher power, or trusting God, trusting my adult self to give me what I need and to care for all of my inner parts. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and you know, when you're saying that, it just really goes back to what we were saying earlier about the difference between the diet mentality, the diet mindset. It's inward on me, 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 me. How am I going to look? How am I going to feel? What am I going to do? Versus the recovery mindset is this big, beautiful world and
Mhm.
all about our mindset and what we want to feel as far as calm and peace and care and love for others and just a better place. So For
exactly.
those listening, what do you think are the most important skills in recovery? And have you applied your goals to your skills? We would love to know. If you want to leave comments for us, we'd love to know what you think about that. For me, I've always said that food prep is my number one. So part of my goal is to have my food planned and prepared every week so I'm not left unprotected, because I know what happens in
Yeah.
those circumstances. Beyond that, I am setting goals to learn more about my emotional processing. Jamie's taught me a lot about that. It's a whole new world of discovery for me. So naming my feelings when they come up, examining if there's any truth to those feelings, protecting my environments from cues and triggering, and learning how to settle myself when I feel anxious. And usually that's through self-talk. Perfecting these tools is a part of my daily goals. One thing we were talking about this morning is we're recording during the Christmas season. It won't come out then, but just know that it's a time of a lot of cues and triggering, and talking to yourself about, okay, what do you need right now when you feel these cravings come on or itching in the brain come on? That is a wonderful goal to be able to stop and ask yourself those questions.
Yes.
What about you?
Very true. Yeah, I'd say my most important skill in recovery is that I have used goal setting,
Mm-hmm.
big goals, smaller goals to move me down the road. And I just kind of keep setting those goals whenever I notice that I will um have a lull in my life when I don't have a goal to work on.
Mm.
So, and this could be because I don't have kids, and I've had to learn how to set myself up for successful mini goals
Yeah.
because I didn't have other, little ones or teenagers to align in life too.
Mm-hmm.
And
Makes sense.
so I've had to learn how to be very, very aware of what goal I'm setting for myself, and is it a healthy goal that moves me forward in life. Um, because so many parents I know, their goals are all around their kids'
Totally.
needs,
Totally.
understandably.
Totally.
But that's something I don't have that ability to do. So it's important for me to set a goal that I'm aware of. And if I feel that lull or I feel that restless irritability, I'm like, okay, there's a goal that I need to set here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that leads into the conversation around some of the biggest setbacks that people face when setting goals are that their goals are too vague, too unrealistic, too insignificant. So if you set goals that are too far out of reach, you might be setting yourself up for failure, which
Mhm.
can lead to frustration, stress, feelings of worthlessness, and potential relapse. I'm sure all of you have heard about setting SMART goals, SMART, and those can give you a better opportunity for success. So let's talk
Yes.
about what the SMART goals are.
The first one is the S stands for specific. What exactly do you want to accomplish?
The M is for measurable, how much or how often.
Third is achievable. A is achievable. Can you realistically do this? And how can you break it down into smaller steps?
I love that one so much because okay, I'm going to interrupt here. Our friend lives in Michigan, and she climbs the stairs when she's gone from us. We do the bleachers here at work, but she lives there on the water, and there's this huge, long staircase of just stairs. And whenever it's spring and summer, it's filled with foliage, so you can't see the top, how far you've got to go. She sent
Mm.
us a picture the other day, because now that it's winter, you can see, and there's no underbrush, you can see all the way to the top, and it seems further. But yeah, break it down to smaller steps seems like easier to do. So I
Yes.
digress. Relevant. What do you want what do you want to achieve this goal? Why do you want to achieve this goal? And what is your motivation?
Yeah. And the T stands for timely. What is your goal's deadline? How long should it take? And I just want to say one thing about deadlines. For me, it's there are many deadlines in recovery that there is no finish line. So I think for
Just
some
good.
goals, it's good to set micro goals or mini goals within
Mhm.
the bigger picture. That's great. But when I like, let's say when I changed my eating and moved away from an omnivore diet and moved more towards a whole food plant-based or unprocessed plant-based diet, there was no goal. There was, maybe I had a goal of taking out dairy was my last thing to take out.
Mhm.
I might have set a goal by a certain date to take out dairy. I remember I started in January, it'll be 4 years. I started in January. And I think by the end of February, I said I wanted to take out eggs. And meat was easy. That was easy. Eggs, not as easy. Dairy, definitely not as easy because it's so addictive. So I ended up saying, okay, by the end of April, I want to take dairy out. And it was just that was it. And then during that time, I hadn't planned to take out caffeine, but we were deep in COVID by then.
Mm.
And I remember I was no longer going to the gym in the mornings out of my house. I was working out at home. So I was taking a caffeine pill or drinking an espresso or something like that before I went to the gym. So I just stopped doing that, just worked out at home and didn't really think much of the caffeine. I experienced major withdrawal,
Oh yeah.
major caffeine withdrawal. It was a solid week of just feeling horrible while I detoxed. And I mean, obviously the caffeine that I was taking was not something suitable for my body. I don't know what I was thinking. So essentially, pulling all that out was a goal that I wasn't really expecting to make, but I made
Mhm.
it and I benefited and I won't go back to it.
Mhm.
Not because I can't control my coffee intake, but because my body obviously is super sensitive to it
Yeah.
and I don't want to put it through that again.
I imagine probably most people that are on caffeine, if they got off, would go through a tremendous withdrawal too. Luckily, I've never been into caffeine, so I don't have to fight with that.
Yeah.
So moving on here, remember your goals don't have to be enormous. They do not have to be big.
Mm-mm.
Eating clean each day is an accomplishment in and of itself, and we encourage you to acknowledge all your victories in recovery.
Yes. Goal setting and feeling a sense of purpose are important to recovery and to life. By
Mhm.
focusing on what you want to achieve, you can become a healthier, stronger, and better person with a more secure foundation. The early stages of recovery can be overwhelming for many reasons, and you might feel a void where your substance of choice used to be.
Yeah.
But setting goals can help fill that void and add structure and meaning to your life and give you something to fight for every day. By setting realistic goals and focusing on the progress you've made, your self-esteem has nowhere to go but up. And I'll add here real quick, Paige, that one of the reasons that we created Real Food Recovery and we created our branches of recovery that we talk about in detail on the podcast and we talk about with our recovery community online is that these 16 branches are quick, easy ways for us to get dopamine when we feel like we don't have direction or goals.
Right.
These 16 branches, those 4 core branches and the other 12 give our members and us the ability to connect with something that brings a sense of accomplishment
Oh,
with
I
it.
agree. And it helps direct you where you need to be setting your goals, don't you think?
Totally.
We've really laid out an easy roadmap for recovery. I love our branches of recovery.
Me
So,
too.
Jamie, don't you think it's easier to stick to recovery when you are making these small steps forward and you can see progress happening? Don't you think that helps?
Yes, I think it's easier to stick to recovery when we're making small steps forward and we can see the progress that we're making. Absolutely.
Totally. When I was climbing Pikes Peak last year, those last 2 miles, it's a 13-mile hike to this 14,000-foot top. At those last 2 miles, man, I'm telling you, they get hard. And during the last, it takes about an hour and a half. That we can do about 30 minutes a mile down low, but at the top, it's an hour a mile or more. I started telling myself, okay, all you need to do is just take one more step, and just one more step, just one more step. And at one point, I said to myself, okay, you're going to count to 1,000. And by the time I know there's 5,280 feet in a mile,
Mhm.
1,760 yards. That's where my math minor comes in. But all I have to do is count to 1,000, and by then I'm going to be a fifth of the mile down the road and so much closer to the top. I never make it past about 500 because I always see a squirrel or a rodent or whatever is up there. And I get lost on what number I'm on. And I'm like, shoot, I got to start over again. But it gave me something to focus on.
Yeah.
And I could see I was making progress, which mentally helped me keep going.
Yeah. Amazing. Yep. This is a good example of one of the main benefits of goals. It helps us focus on the
Mhm.
present and the future, not dwelling on the past, which
Yes.
is not where our power is, right? We can't
Right.
change anything from the past. Plus,
Mhm.
goal setting helps us develop patience and a good work ethic,
Mhm.
not to mention prioritizing actions, achieving aspirations, and reestablishing feelings of purpose and self-worth.
I
Uh,
agree.
amen to all of that. I love all of that.
Yeah. So as we wrap up this podcast, we want to leave you with a couple final tips.
Mhm.
Writing down goals is helpful. It becomes somewhat of a contract with yourself. It
That's
makes it
exactly
a little more binding, and make sure to include your why for the goal. If you have personal success stories when it comes to goals, please share them with us. We want to share it with others. We want to know what you're doing, and we learn from you all just as well. We love hearing from you. And after all, we are really all in this together.
Amen. Very well said. All right, we've got some listener questions to get to.
Right.
First one is, if goals are so important, why do so many give them up before they are reached?
Good
I've
question.
never heard anyone brag about reaching their New Year's goals. They usually forget about them by mid-January. That's so true. When I was in my, my favorite gym setting, for whether it was the kids
Right.
gym or any other gym that I was part of, I dreaded January and
Right.
I loved it because usually by the joke was by Valentine's Day, everyone remembered that their spouses loved them, no matter
Yeah.
what size they were, and they stopped
Mhm.
going to the gym.
Mhm. If
So
not
we'd get the
sooner.
gym, huh?
If not sooner.
Exactly. Oh, totally.
I
Yeah, we'd
usually
get
say
the
by
gym back.
January 15th that it's then back out.
Yeah, and it's wonderful. But it really was. I mean, not to sound negative, but it was such a downer every year because it's like, you couldn't get a weight, you couldn't get a machine, you couldn't get.
Right.
uh it was so hard to navigate that. But um we understand that, you have a valid concern, our
Right.
listener, by bringing this up. There's a couple of reasons that people don't achieve their goals. The first time, sometimes they can be too big, um, which is why we love the saying, eat an elephant one bite at a time.
Mhm.
When the goals are smaller and more doable, people are more likely to stick with them and find it motivating to reach small achievements. Again, like those little milestones give you fuel to make it to the next milestone. That's why we
Mhm.
break things down. There's another reason, unfortunately, that there's so much more um, more heartbreaking reason around this. But people with low self-worth don't
Mhm.
believe in themselves and give up before
Yeah.
they even get started because they feel it's a waste of time. They convince themselves they have no value or ambition and will never finish what they started. And they also have a fear of failure.
Mhm.
So again, that could be why they're abandoning their goals. And really, the last point I want to make here is that people lack resilience. Not
Yeah.
all, but some, and the ability to hang in there when things get tough. They
Mhm.
just think it's easier to give up when in actuality the opposite is true. So it really is like, I if I give up on a goal, I will be very I will constantly think about the fact that I gave up on it instead of just keep going with the goal. Here's something that really helps me. I was taught this years ago. The time will pass anyway.
Yeah.
What are you doing with it? Right?
Right.
Are you
Mhm.
heading towards your goal, or are you just letting the time pass?
Mhm.
So for me, if the time is passing anyway, and Lord willing, I'm alive for it, why would I not have a goal to work towards?
Right. I love all those points. And as you were talking, I was thinking about so many people, once the new is worn off, once the shine isn't there anymore. I've
Mhm.
worked with so many people who are like, I want to lose weight. I'm ready. And we jump in, and that first week they lose a couple of pounds, that people do that first week, that they
Right,
might lose 3 pounds. I'm like, wow, I'm so excited. Well, by week two, it's not as fun as it was.
right.
It actually takes a little bit of work. And by week three, I mean, they're completely off. So that's why I think I admire you so greatly, is that stick to itiveness. that simple little thing of stick-to-itiveness is a rarity. And you're talking about a 4-year journey, right? Isn't that what you
Well,
said? 4
yeah,
years?
of the bulk of it. And then since then, it's been another almost 12 years
Yeah.
of,
So
of constant refinement of that goal.
So that's why I think what you've done amazes me more, because of the human nature of people. You have that chip in your brain that few lack, as far as being willing to stick with it when it's not fun and exciting. It
True.
might be slow
True.
progress. So I mean, that was
Yeah.
a slow progress to keep that up. It's amazing, mind blowing.
Thank you.
Okay, I digress. So second listener question is, do you have to have goals to be successful in life? No, don't have to. I know plenty of people who don't set goals and they're not living under a bridge.
Nope.
So it is just a matter of what speaks to you and what you find motivating. For example, I get a cheap thrill from making lists and enjoy the euphoria of crossing something off after I'm done.
My
Sometimes
favorite
I'll
thing.
put small things on there, like making my bed, just so I can cross another thing off my list. So I am being silly, but in my example, it allows you to see that you are making progress in your day. Those small things add up. But if you are skipping right along in life and you don't feel adrift or unmotivated and are enjoying a fulfilling life, it sounds like you're doing just fine. So just keep on trucking, man.
Agreed. Agreed. Uh, all right. Last viewer question. I very much want to get off processed food, but when I look at that goal, it just seems so far out of reach.
Yeah.
So I just stop before I get started. How would I ever
Mhm.
have any hope when I'm so far away from what I want? So again, live this. I totally get it. I didn't know back then that it was about being off processed foods. I really
Right.
just thought it was about weight. But I had a
Mm.
huge goal. I had a huge, big, hairy, aggressive goal at the time of getting down to a normal size. That's all I knew. I didn't know a number. I just knew a normal size because I really did not know what normal was for my body.
I guess that's true.
And I just wanted to be in a normal size body. So, but I've coached this so many times. I tell people, when I started back then, I would look at the mountain ahead of me
Yeah.
and think there's no way I can make it up this mountain.
Right.
There's no way. This mountain is huge. How am I ever going to do it? And I tell people all the time, just like I told myself back then, take your eye off the mountain and put your perspective right down in front of you, right down at your feet, and just take a step. And just keep your focus down in front of you, immediately in front of you, and take another step and another step. Don't worry about the mountain. Just keep taking that next right step that gets you closer to what you want to do, looking at the behaviors you want to adopt, and that will be what gets you. And then pretty soon you'll look back and you're like, hey, I'm halfway up the mountain, or hey, I'm a third of the way up the mountain, and isn't this cool? Just keep taking the next step. Again, we had Chef AJ on last year, and she said something we will never forget. She said, for some, the abstinence the abstinence plan sets the bar too high. So if you can't do everything all at once, what can you do?
Mm-hmm.
Can you take something out that really is detrimental to your health, or doesn't takes you away from your goals in general? Can you take one small thing out and tackle it as achievable? Is it something around a clean breakfast? Is it a
Mm-hmm.
5-minute walk around the block? Is it drinking your water every day? Again, it goes back to making sure your goals are appropriate for your progress, and any movement forward is progress. So
Yeah.
good question.
Yeah. Love it. Great episode. This is fun. And again, we'd love your feedback. And if you want to rate and review our podcast, we would appreciate that as well.
Yes.
You can find more about us on our website at realfoodrecovery4u.com. That's the number 4, the letter U, realfoodrecovery4u.com. And we hope to see you again soon. Thanks, guys. See you later. Bye-bye.
Take care.